Hello, Connecticut students and parents, and American students and parents, not just Wethersfield, Connecticut students and parents, and intercities, Rocky Hill students and parents. I recorded a method, a singular method of organized crimes, worse than war crimes. For example, regarding what black pupils, whites of eyes, and a breaching method, having reassigned that and having had roles with it sustained northern colonies and southern colonies since before our founders were born, and stayed northern colonies, southern colonies while our founders were born, where they didn't have free speech and they declassified a whole bunch of things that demonstrated that to us. They had to go like this to us through declassified. But instead, being and having been used remotely, certain type of victim slash hyper victim, replacing what they communicated about the, like, for example, the scientific value of a human fact treating nature breaching method is demonstrated by as a scientific, as a inseparable part of our founders' communications behind James Madison and his plan. And I read that we were all directed to um, refer to our founders plural as James Madison before he was a president. His plan forced the other third of our founders. There were the founders behind him that agreed to be him, but they couldn't be him because even he didn't have free speech to show who he was and really like properly defend why and how he has his roles behind us getting told to get the Constitution unabridged and how and why we have rights that are too numerous to have to list. And we're supposed to explain. The communications are distinct from what they said. So now they have either what they said restricted, so that gets away with sensing for sense and sensibilities employed by a breaching method at A through Z, suits and ties, exceptions. There is another name to evolve here. And nature itself is showing us. If you look even at the worst things, just instead of making they're way easier to make criminal insidiousness natures out of positives, out of negatives. Criminal insidiousness natures of positives that are just really negative. Per nature system, that which is hyper native, that which doesn't allow us to appreciate properly Native American rights, and them us. No, them us, because we are a system now as human species body of individual bodies as tactical ulterior from the hypernative system. We must help each other. I read one of the Native American leaders on YouTube. I don't know if officially or lead, but it was the best advice I ever heard for humanity. He said we must read each other's dreams. I can't find the link to it. And I'll appreciate it if anyone will give me that link. Because that's one of the most powerful things ever. Because why? Because there's a breaching method involved here too, with names A through Z. That which originally still, even if it's no longer here, it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the names of the people of the sciences from off those locations to then hyper additional apparent and real motivations, hyper additional of for motivations for collusions with no one wanted collusions with. But it made accept it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the phenomenon of the stewards of the phenomenon of names A through Z as countries, but in their semi-ancient forms. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to defend themselves wrongly, and then to defend that, not knowing how to defend themselves properly from what their proofs was caused by interbranch and terrorists and criminal enterprises at the same time with roles with difference. They knew they were going to get in trouble, so they used their differences. They were going to get caught for bad things, so they used their differences to force, trick, hurt, persuade people to do things independent. And while that's going on, no one's paying attention. There's a quality of fact-cheating nature that was forced. That was criminal in citizen's nature itself, all sides, and they knew that. But no one fathomed that what it was doing was, backing up people into defenses of self-value is relevant too, because that's we're in how we can show it's being and has been used remotely, which is what inseparable from what's Black people's rights of eyes are about. Hyper additionally, with our founders, too, about what their communications are changed about this. Our founders' communications communicated that's how they assigned roles with other communicated for Black pupils, whites of eyes, then it communicates. Some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness nature, including things that are invisible but still discernible, like criminal insidiousness. Of positive treatments, we know this. In other words, more of us, we don't even need to be polled. When we have Black people's whites of eyes and we hear subject treatments about American history, we know instinctively to an extent that our founders wanted nothing to do with that. But more and more, through our schools, there are collusion/S, but it's that country's A through Z. But where and how they counter it here to there. They counter it and they claim it as criminal foreign influences, etc., leaving out the hyper-criminal foreign influence. And while defending that as Styles' nature, self-valuing that having been communicated for America's founders. So then they value collusion with the fact that something is published that's not even our founders' words. And our founders are distinct from our presidents, per our founders, plural, who asked to be referred to as James Madison, singular. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use their plan. But we're also supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, which also George Washington and the founders behind him, that they demonstrably had to extort George Washington, counter-extort George Washington too. But he agreed to help. George Washington's little army couldn't go against the internationally monitored conversations. They had international that themselves individually grouped it together. They were used remotely, which is why they had their own country, their own colonies divided, their own companies. Which is why and how the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, and the people then wanted to build safer and better. Real science shows that. Other is being and has been communicated to our founders regarding the founding locations and the breaching methods, entrenchments with northern colonies and southern colonies. Regardless on paper, or it's the possession of this country or that country, we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. And we're supposed to have the nature of debate not used to prevent short words, let alone out here. While we know, like, for example, there are streams of people that go into, it was an unbelievable amount of, I believe it was over 200 people that Judge Napolitano, one of his videos on YouTube channel, Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom. He said when he was the first, I believe it was a Superior Court judge, and people came in for an arraignment. When they first come in, they're supposed to be for an arraignment. and I guess it depends what people do or whatever. And there are all kinds of exceptions, but they've been faking exception nature only capable of it. Relative to when we were little kids, we had means to discern. There was a breaching method against the difference of Native Americans as the human species body of individual bodies, as a system force, tactical terror. This is not what our ancients, before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. I mean, hyper criminally foreign influenced, rather. I'm not even a lawyer, thank God. They became criminally, because we have the identity of all the sciences that share it at the same time, and the lawyers and the judges will help us as the human species body of individual bodies. And in other words, when they bring up things like diplomacy or war or peace, real science would have brought up the difference between peace, criminal and seditious natures of peace, and hyper peace. Nature itself shows us that we should use this word, hyper peace, and hyper simultaneous, because there are a whole bunch of different species bodies, and they have quality aspects in nature that are distinct from us, but also non-distinct from us. And neither we nor they invented that. We are shown a hyper invisible. We need to use this too. Identity of value / value progression. It is what we can discern, where and how we can discern why and how the participle natures are simultaneously coupled and grouped. An individual, the present participle, and the past participle. Appreciating and understanding why and how these are verbs that are inflected, so they are not being used as a predicate, which is another name for a verb. We need more than one name for a verb because of this particular identity of hypervolume science, the identity of hyper simultaneous nature. So it shows us the science of reason needs to discern that and how there is one identity of value progression that is not any of the species bodies, but is all things anyway, even art or anything that's made up. It is inseparable distinctly from the finite details or the order of the finite, and as the difference of that, while not by any way. It is not us. It is not the other species bodies, but is all things anyway. The identity of all space / existence. Also, who denies the significance or the value of understanding this true always. Or if they deny this, their logic and or their nature will have demonstration. /s of the same thing. /things, plural. We are individual species bodies, whereas we are a human individual species body of individual bodies with all grouped differences, also in demonstration of how it is functional, where and how the identity of all things at once, while not by any way, is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. It is not just an inseparable part from English grammar. Again, even anything made up, it is distinct as the difference between the order of the finite is distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously / hyper simultaneously, and further that way as the value of what is grouped or active, and then further distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneous / hyper simultaneous as what is progressive, like the seasons. Progressive as its body. We know that nature's identity itself is showing us the value of seasons before they even come here, and we know A through Z. It is now through systems abridged. So we understand how and why the people fail to speak for the Constitution unabridged. And we make excuses for them, or we allow no excuses for them. And the difference of it is exactly what the breaching method maintains, appreciated. We should be appreciating. It's the simultaneous, because the simultaneous can be used to show the hyper-simultaneous. It is the difference between how the word, the phrase, and the clause are grouped. Or the word, the phrase, in the sentence. You know, a dependent clause can't be a complete sentence. This is not just because some rules that were made up. The ancients appreciated how nature guides us by also showing us the difference where sciences appear not to share an identity boxings. By the way, pure science, boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped. Everything is a demonstration of the identity of the hyper-simultaneous nature. This slash simultaneous nature. And it is true, conversely, distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, slash hyper-simultaneously, per has one identity of relationship to itself, wherein how it is not juxtaposed with matter, and wherein how it has a distinct identity relationship to itself, the identity of all things, even if it is made up, where it is juxtaposed with matter, bodies of life, including plants. And know how it is right between, it is right where it is about to be too hot or too cold, where Earth has a special difference. And how a special difference has, know how we have black people's whites of eyes. And we have the same color eyes, while we have different color eyes at the same time. Directed to us, projected to us by the identity of all things, again, for the reasons noted. Therefore, in other words, relativity is real. For example, this breaching method measures and maintains at each age of fact, should be nature cyclically distinctly. This is a multi-front. At countries A through Z are a victim of what is not A through Z, but it measures and maintains. It shows the different natures of industry, styles, natures of logic. They need to self-value right now, active for active group reasons. How the past people too had other things, others ourselves, for blame, self-value, even though they don't self-value that. In other words, while pretending to be able to speak for integrity or the names of the sciences. In other words, or reality, in other words. Only voices for criminal and citizens' natures of reality are being and have been voiced. In other words, clearer than day. Just suburban kids across America. We would have helped. We would have, we were first, in other words, like New York City. Real quick, especially if we make a gaming system. We have to understand, we have to read, again, Native Americans. Some Native Americans somewhere on YouTube said, we must read each other's dreams. Especially, he didn't say especially, but especially in the context where there's a hyper criminally foreign influence and rolls with itself. Or it's sensing, people sensing for itself. Those roles not entertained. Not one has trained. From America to Russia to Ukraine, The suburbs look almost exactly alike. That before cars were invented, before our founders were born, there were homes that were built, and the designs were criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought too. Our takes on that, pretending it's even debatable. They're internationally monitored conversations, and there was slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies, and how they had it mixed was right, where, and how. Everyone was fact, cheap nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. And your roles with it, to an extent, self-valued and pretending otherwise you were sensed, including if as a body, as a majority of people, including if as a body, as the phenomenon of the name of a whole group, a whole country together, which that name can only be operated by locations, areas, and states know. Or foreign through voting, but voting is nothing if you're paying attention to the science of the Constitution unabridged, and why and how we have rights are too numerous to have to list. This breaching method back the differences of the names at the same, thank God, at the same time it backed the identities of difference, including overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. With like witch trials, even if it was made up. Witch trials are about those crazy torture, extortion, slavery laws. In fact, true nature of slavery, therefore physical, against every single person and against every difference. Like wealth. There's a big difference in the natures of wealth and of the roles with it and of uses of those differences. That is used to hide behind and through by a breaching method clearer than day that has maintained a quality of fact, cheap nature, entertained formally, that can't defend itself without self-valuing it, having been and being right now with the hierarchies of law, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists, and intelligence, foreign and domestic. They never had possession of their name /S here or nor there. No one can until you allow free speech in the hyper-evidential regarding James Madison's communications. Again, that distinct from what he said. It's the names of the people of sciences. The breaching method showed them. In other words, so there's a Michael Emmett who's involved long term with a whole bunch of different proven child abusers, leaders of the kids, years apart, involved with a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, involved with judges, prosecutors, people seating juries, people seating fake evidence of collusion /S in databases, as collusion /S increasingly with all natures of crime scenes and exceptions tied to that. There's a Darren involved with people with East Hartford campuses and places like a CRT, community resources training. And there were roles with New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, people with Connecticut's District Court, and people next to the Connecticut Judicial Branch offices, increasingly involved with various natures of federal crimes and organized crimes, including wire crime acts and methods and digital crimes, where they replace and fake what's digitally recorded. Like with Michael Emmett, further has roles with the principal upskirt nature, who was involved with some untimely deaths, and with some other police forms and houses near me involved with them with that, and other police departments, and retired police chiefs from Wethersfield, and their families and intimate ties. A police chief Centron, And there's a Leahy family that faked conversations with me. I never had a conversation with them in my life. They're involved with a Brian Silver and a Rick Cianfaglione. Make confessions. He was influenced to make fake exception. I knew him, and to fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, with people I don't know at all too, and with people increasingly involved with a former Mayor Gold, with people that were putting fake things from other classrooms with their teachers and speaking lies to my teacher, and to my teachers plural, as people increasingly involved with things like body dumping spots that were brought up years apart, with the people who had roles with the untimely death at Trinity College. There's a Joshua Schumack. There's a Joshua Stryker. I never had anything to do with a Joshua Stryker in my life. He's been planting evidences with the FBI and people from other countries, and people with all kinds of roles with the Connecticut Judicial Branch offices, and their families' roles with intelligence families next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, and next to campuses where they're putting identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they have been faking and replacing what's actually recorded. Also with Facebook, these are also foreign and domestic military involved. Like there are people with the name Kolvinskis in Wethersfield, involved with the Mark Violet, involved with some intelligence families near me that recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed roles with them. And they said they have some KKK black themed intelligence involved with them at UConn. Oh, they didn't say UConn. They said, but it's recorded UConn too. But they said Central Connecticut State University and the sides of it, 3 years of three, and with Connecticut campuses, they're educators. I never had classes with them. Their roles with intelligence near me. A whole bunch of people like a Robert Rodriguez have been planting evidences near me. He also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the people with the name Scalora involved. There are people involved with the name Scalora that DeMorrow and Colello through time, they increasingly have wire crimes with the police that are forging and switching names. Wethersfield police fake conversations with me that weren't at all when I was a kid and when I was an adult. And when I was a kid, I didn't even go down there. When I was an adult, when I did go down there, I didn't even have a word of them either. They stole a word from my Saudi friend, sentence from my Saudi friend, increasingly tied to a Mendez and DeMora people. I didn't know that before I knew them. There's a whole bunch of people from other countries involved with the intelligence families from Connecticut. Have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, no, which is one of the things that changing what black pupils and whites of eyes communicates is about, and changing what anyone communicates about this. That's a serious thing, to change what anyone says about this when they're trying to speak about the Constitution unabridged and what our founders communicated about this. It is inseparable from some of the treatments that have had it separable. They have left out the collusion. Increasingly, these are people with the state corrections offices and next to it, involved with the FBI, foreign and domestic intelligence, have been put with the same ones involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first force, all kinds of people at Harvard Hospital, involved with intelligence families near me. Recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm. As the ones like with the name Colello on YouTube, as the ones on Facebook too, with Joshua Julian. Joshua Julian's on the Facebook page of the proven principal child abuser, involved with more digital crimes too with the Wethersfield police and Facebook, and the Facebook page in the Britain Superior Court, and the Wethersfield Police Department, and Whiting Forensics. Whiting Forensics has a Bob Chase that confessed. There's a Phil Colello involved with the falsified police report. I can't get them on paper. They keep making confessions and demonstrations. They switch officers' names on falsified police reports and leave records criminally foreign influenced so they could cover up how they were and are used remotely, criminally foreign influenced, all natures of investigations, investigators, and treatments of crime scenes, as collusion slash S. And the differences of guilt, worth there. That too is used remotely by the breaching method. They showed you guys how to estimate subjects, values, tactically ulterior from how nature does, because it shows us the ways we know, and then further hyper additionally. An additional way slash S, which goes apart, which shows us how we can discern it too. Because its identity and relationship to itself. Complete. It comes with any portion of itself that we can discern. Like how it shows us there's an extent to the past that we know is true always. We know other people know there's an extent to the past they know is true, are true always. We know that they are now active, the group truths that they know is that truth always. We know that they know there are group truths, things about the future that are true always, only increasing value, like the seasons. And we know that these are now through a bridge since some ancient times, systems. But everyone was shocked and awe when you guys were little kids. And other things, others ourselves, were blamed, were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be blamed by you guys. Even though you had means then to discern this. There are a whole bunch of crime methods and little magic tricks, fake ties and fake natures of ties between people that they do with little quick instances. And for descriptions of it, we'll never get it right. And the breaching method, excuse me, breaching method showed the identities of law. How they had to counter this thing. We have to have someone to call. That's why it's important to discern the wire crime acts and methods of Wethersfield police and other police departments involved with them. The whole wire crime acts and methods, whole methods of them predicate acts. So in other words, too, Fox Connecticut News, a whole bunch of intelligence people, a bunch of ways. They know to an extent, but they're pretending not to fathom. Oh, that's our jobs. In other words, you guys aren't following mandated law. And you need to blame on other things, others yourselves, even when using truths. Like what we are showing about what's going on between Palestine and Israel. But in other words, we have to focus on actual predicate acts, and we're being forced to use other people's evidences, where all sides are a shell game. No sides have addressed black people's rights of eyes. No sides are true. They're trying to be, but they're trying to be like wrong, exactly the way the breaching method knew. While they're going to pretend other, they're going to pretend that they could speak for economy. Oh, but economies work like this. How about our founders communicated? And nature itself shows us. There are hyper positives if we just address how at A through Z, everyone addressed the economy exactly the way the breaching method knew they would, leaving itself out. In other words. And what we have to address is how even peaceful nuclear weapons, they create more and more causes where people need to hide things that are classified, that are not even classified. And that phenomenon is increasingly used by people, wherein how the breaching method uses unrestricted and uneven discerned. At A through Z, everywhere the human species body has an individual body. Fact, human nature, quality, aspects of nature used remotely, criminally forward influence, tactically delusion, draw, and styles, needs, and natures of that, or sensing for it. We have to address this before we can come to sensibilities. It's just how nature itself shows us. The identity of nature itself is that which is sharing, distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. Why English and how English is valuing the predicate and why and how. The law is valuing the predicate act as a means to discern the invisible slash hyper invisible, and the slash hyper invisible slash invisible, but still discernible. In that way, he may pray vaccines. But we have relativity things replaced, pretended theory. Psychiatry has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Roles with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Convictions by the principles of American history. And there are uses of their roles and crime methods, fabricating conversations with people into databases, old transcripts, and forging names of other doctors to do so. Foreign and domestic, too, how they are shared. That brings up guilt and who owes money for that guilt, who's going to get punished for that guilt. So with our sides, we don't have possessions of the names. And with that, we're more and more, they're in defense of their names. Specifically to make it defense of the name exactly what the breaching method uses remotely. Each campus I went to has roles with the World Trade Center attack, with names next to them. And it is recorded as not personal. They're going out of their way to make it look like that, because they also put everyone to fake and change communications with everyone around them on a mass scale. And the differences of our sides rules, there are a whole bunch of different countries involved with Wethersfield intelligence families and interbranch, and their state offices, the state judicial branch offices, and the state corrections offices, distinctly, non-distinctly. And sometimes, like, note the corrections offices at a town line. It's half Wethersfield, half Hartford, I believe, too, on the sides of it. These are also people with campuses in Sandy Hook, including a prison in Sandy Hook, involved with a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes and crime scenes. But since before their criminals were there, since before some of their criminals were adults. And these are people involved with a whole bunch of different countries at once. They have roles of differences racket and it's important to discern it that way. Differences racketeering worse than war crimes. Replacing what nature communicates with black people as whites of eyes. In other words, so Connecticut's Channel 3 News recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with other news locations, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. And their intelligence and the difference of the intelligence, them or next to them. And the difference of that is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved. Increasingly, a Tranatolo is involved with all kinds of legal scams and data and identity theft, fraud, slanders with judges and prosecutors, their family members, various natures of criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of other countries involved with the World Trade Center attack, all sides. No sides are capable of being honest and using science to discern what actually was and is involved with the Saudi attackers, which this breaching method has clearer than day. The difference of people attacking the religions and the people defending them, and the exceptions that they're only allowing to hear as an array and collusion against even the science of reading them. They say, it says right in the beginning of the Old Testament, it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before that. In other words, people might say, well, that's the Old Testament. I believe in the New Testament. Or people might say, well, that's the Old Testament, but why should you leave out the back part of the book? And so they can't be honest about that part at the beginning of after that part too, because that's also about science, because it's about the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So how can you be honest about good and evil if you can't be honest about where it says only defend here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And then so they can't be honest about the difference of that either. And now these are people that were shown they need to pretend to be against dictators because they're involved with dictatorship, while tactically delusions rot with what is formally, spoken by the sciences. They've been pretending people have unnatural things believed about American history and about religion so they could torture them. But the methods of torture came from before the Patriot Act. They came from since before our founders were born. And it's a differences bracket. All differences bracket method, racketeering method worse than war crimes. And so we're going to need those statutes. And we're going to need, two natures of statutes and prayer, of pantheism as a function, not prayer for science, where we're contemplating the hyper-transparency. And we have it hyper-transparent to do that. Pantheism serves a function by the republic for which we stand in the Campus Marcius. We inherited from ancient times abridged, criminally foreign influenced. And it appreciated before, and it became criminally foreign influenced. Exceptions and exception nature to itself. So it could be and stay led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. It shows us the difference of what is positive everywhere at once, or what is only temporary positive, or positive only as not even positive as criminal and citizen's nature. Disguised as positive, like a truth used for a lie. Truth used to screen a lie. Truth used just to contain a quality of fact should be nature as criminal and citizen's nature, as its quality / qualities, as its aspect / aspects, as its natures, as its nature / as nature denied though. See, we all know that we're denied the nature proper for the subject treatments by how we have black people's whites of eyes in these colors slandered. Self-value functions other than that which teaches us about values. The way we know, value has relativity, positive, negative simultaneously, / hyper simultaneously. Just like identity. And just like our quality of diffusion, where we are identity as life, too. We are automatically relativity to positive and negative equally, where we are relative to, from, as, with, and for, space / existence. But further, we are a quality diffusion, and we can be ignored system, but our value is forced from here as its own system, as itself. All things, even those made up. It shows us the positive and negative way. It shows us to be contemplating tactical ulterior from how we've been shown. So in other words, the experts of the sciences, they are recorded, professed, demonstrated, confirmed, involve with predicate acts with facts, methods, right, where, and how. They need to pretend they have integrity as experts. So they've been little parlor games, self-value roles. Prepare your souls. So a whole bunch of people with Harvard Hospital's Institute of Living founded on the campus of Harvard Hospital in 1822, with slavery still entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies. And still others communicated about that, about why and how that was. Then our founders communicated for us to communicate about that. And this is also relative to where and how these mental health locations and their workers, like ones with the name Leahy and Lombardo, involved with various natures of organized crimes with kids in my area who are now adults, who I caught involved with the principal child abuser, and just with fact-sheeping nature as punks. In other words, and calling out other people to be punks, even when correctly. Like, for example, I forced people to call police without telling them why. I told them, well, I'll stop being belligerent with my voice till I got them to call police. Then I found I know, in other words, so they forced me mental evaluation. And when I got there, I saw the people involved with who started that, and which was through time, like Kevin Dillon is involved with a whole bunch of people with the Parks and Recs in Wethersfield, and the people involved with wire crimes in Wethersfield police, who again attached me to fake conversations with themselves at the police station, and all when I was a kid, and then as an adult. In other words, and they did it through the news. I don't know if that was. I think it was WFSB too. But WTNH has a bunch of people tied to it. In other words, inter everything, interbranch, interintelligence, foreign and domestic, where they're family members, they have their kids and their adults, how they are kids and adults, and they have fake motivations. Like ones with the name of Violet, people associated with machining, with intercities, and in other words. And with the news places involved with Trinity College with the Joshua Stryker, too, who faked conversations with me, faked things about himself and me to a Dean Alford. But this is also involved with and has collusions with the Dean Judd and his kids, with FBI Director Robert Luskin, with a whole bunch of other countries, including a Kuwaiti general and American generals. And I don't know the Schedule family. That is with a street that's conjunctive to Valleycrest, but the side of their house is on Valleycrest, but I don't think that's the street. I don't know the name of the street. And there's people with the name Tomorrow on Valleycrest. And there are other people associated with them. And also as people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield. They're involved with some home break-ins in my area with people from Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Heather Hansen and Joe DeMauro said they had roles at the corner with houses and businesses at the corners there, intercities with the campuses. They've been putting predicate acts. I never had a class with them. They try to make it look like an exception with an 8th grade teacher, a Mr. Neville, increasingly where he lived along Route 3, like in an apartment building, and spots next to it. Has something to do with retired police chiefs involved with foreign and domestic medical families, and ones with the military, involved with a whole bunch of people at the Britain Superior Court, the different positions, including victims advocates, collusions with victims at the same time with all sides of criminal and civil cases. The news at the same time, the courts names their family members, the intelligence tied to them putting fake the same sequence shifts, the same collusion / with a whole bunch of different countries and other natures of criminal insidiousness and bodies of it, like criminal enterprises and terrorists. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to it as an observer right before the World Trade Center attack. And that's in Manhattan, New York. So I know that too. Before that was after the World Trade Center attack, when WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about and with others about that. And while they were forcing child abusers leaders of the kids at the time, proven. With, as at the time too, collusion / that's was 1 years before that, who had first been forced too, and rolls with it, including with his victims, collusion / S. The same ones next to WFSB, the same ones next to Fox Connecticut News, the same ones next to WTNH, increasingly criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, rolls with town lines. roles with uses of ground differences and distinctions to cover up how they are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. Roles A through Z, otherwise that body is sensed, including if it's a majority of people, including if it's everyone, and that is adapted to, including if it's any majority of any grouping of countries to counter what this causes and keeps blame on other things others themselves are sensing and adapting. It's not by accident. They got away so long with pretending they could speak for integrity, and they left out black people's whites of eyes. They left out what really we discern when we watch a rap video as a little kid or as an adult, especially as adult. But you guys want to have adult as a stupid fake theater, and you need to value the fake things in databases to get away with that, and worse. So let's all rehearse. There's a Joshua Schumacher and his mother are involved also with some KKK black themed and Confederate flag themed and people with the religious spots. There were some, Jewish and other natures of Catholic forms of it, forms of Christianity and other crazy things where they got brought in at the same time. Time collusion, but the difference is racketeering, identity theft, fraud, slanders. That's also evidence hyper-evidential. They are refusing to identify themselves interbranch, intercities, and interstates, the same ones involved in intercities and intercampuses too. The educators of the intelligence families that are don't even live here anymore. They are increasingly involved with the people associated with this Robert Rodriguez, who made confessions across the street from my house to make it look like he knew me. In other words, and then he confirmed it on Facebook. Robert Rodriguez. He also confirmed. He also confirmed people with the name Colello involved with him, with my neighbors, with the falsified police reports and wire crime acts and methods with multiple police departments, and with Wethersfield police since I was a kid. Their roles with various natures of organized crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw readings of statutes, precedents, relative. They also have some black KKK, Latino themes involved with the identity theft, fraud, slanders, and delusions on off the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices and sequence shifts. And in other words, and they can't bring the instances like with the Mike Roberts and the kid. They put fake sides of instances, and I don't know the other one's name. Says his name is Brayrock. We have some black KKK Latino theme, and they have differences, rackets, roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, identity theft, fraud, slanders with foreign retired mayors, people that are communicating with the senators. Already everyone, it showed, the breaching method showed them they need to hide what they actually value as. A through Z, the names of the people of the sciences. Increasingly collusion /S with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists. See them with self-value with the uses of extremism. Oh, because it's just so much. Let's focus on the actual thing. Oh, but then they'll adapt. Of course they're going to adapt. These people have been using their differences to sequence shift. There are sequence shift roles. There is worse than criminal incompetence with the people pretend they know they have, but if they don't, they're going to pretend they don't know that, okay, this is my caseload, I do this. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Don't hide the roles with the FBI involved. You guys are going to make me go deeper into it because I minded my business since I was a kid. So you have CIA, FBI, the difference of that. Like when you guys bring up serious things like the Kennedy assassination or the shooting of anyone, let alone of a president /chief. You guys can't even get Native American history right or the colonists or the difference, or in other words, because you had replaced. This would have been brought up, but you had nature debate. That's saying, let alone criminally foreign influence. You got criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw experts on the names of the people of sciences, including the branches of government. That's why they forge and switch names. That's one of the things they're involved with, where and how they've been communicating other things and others, blaming other things, others themselves, for why how there are things like slavery entrenched originally. And still, clearer than day, we see fact, human nature, torture, extorted, and enslaved, therefore physically, the people in the buildings behind the rappers in the video. Who wants to debate this? The only way they can get away with it, using passions and emotions dishonestly, leaving it only to not to get behind like how we have black people's rights of eyes. Don't leave it out. We should be like that. We want these passions, emotions, get something behind like that about something that's true always. Don't leave out what nature communicates about that. In other words, they have it on nature only as criminal insidious nature. Natural law is real. Yeah. So in other words, there's a Michael Emmett, and there are more people with a Bob Chase involved with Whiting forensics with a Joshua Julian, and a whole bunch of people named Dylan and medical families from Harper Hospital involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, digital evidences crimes, federal evidences crimes, federal evidences crimes methods, whole federal evidences crime rackets, organized crimes. We have the judicial branch and the corrections offices with the same names have been planted. Evidences at the boxing gyms of Connecticut with the same houses near me, with the people tied in their conversations. Then they're not going to want the answers, and then they want to be mad at people. This has complete possession over the people, like with the military too. There's Dave. He doesn't know me. Try to make a fake exception really quick, man. We'll have a fake exception of knowing me next to the state corrections offices with Ray Colello and Joe DeMoro, increasingly involved with foreign and domestic military. They have been planting evidences before the World Trade Center attack with people involved with the different gyms of Connecticut. And I was an independent fighter going gym to gym. And I used to fight in different states. And I used to fight throughout New England. I was one of the most active open class amateurs in New England for about 5 years, like right before the World Trade Center attack. And I started learning a whole bunch of things about roles since before I was born and through my lifetime. People from Central Connecticut State University and their intelligence families, they have roles with a whole bunch of different countries and a whole bunch of different natures of campuses of all ages and natures, colleges, universities. Next to them, increasingly are manifest roles also with all kinds of federal evidence reception, racketeering, worse than war crime acts and methods, and little magic tricks that everyone has missed because the breaching method that replaced what everyone was capable of discerning or sensing us when trying to discern or communicate it properly and coming at us in ways that there is no way to counter properly. Because this is also a way of faking and changing everything that's actually recorded, including on campuses where they film them 24/7. These are natures of collusions with the differences of guilt, where sometimes it's them the most, but it's increasingly the difference of that also. In other words, they're putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to people on campuses that never even saw each other, and they're filmed 24/7, but no one's checking the intelligence. The people seating the juries are involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes and crime methods. Clearer than day, they pretend other too, but they're getting away with it because you guys aren't getting them on paper, one name and sequence. You should fear God to make me beg you all this time on YouTube. And the Wethersfield police were involved with wire crime acts and methods with their phones too. and with other agencies and with other police departments at the same time. So they are leaking too. You make sure they understand that. Wethersfield kids, parents, make sure they get on paper one name and sequence. Now there are further people with the investigate. There are people with the name Mendez involved with all kinds of differences, rackets, and all kinds of natures of organized crimes, and collusion slash S with them with other people too. That faked conversations with me at the Wethersfield Police Department. These are also people next to Fox Connecticut News in downtown Hartford. A whole bunch of people with those spots next to Fox Connecticut News have that as one of the things that links a whole bunch of people to identity theft, fraud, slanders with people that were in my fourth, fifth, and sixth grade class who had communications with them about me, telling lies about me. And probably that, they're just attaching everyone to fake and changed communications with each other. Increasingly, these are people involved with mayors too, and retired mayors. There's a Ruth next to the Wethersfield Board of Education who's increasingly involved with some people from other countries, involved with criminal enterprises, and a John with DeMora with some rape confessions, and roles with criminal enterprises, and roles with the FBI, and courts replacing and changing what was recorded involved with his roles with that, and home break-ins in the area, and untimely deaths, and roles with all kinds of things like all kinds of influences over people at the Wethersfield Community Center, at the Wethersfield town offices, used remotely criminally foreign influence tactics with delusions wrought, like the founding locations with the witch trials place and Webb House, now renamed to Webb Stevens House, and fit the sense and sensibilities by that. Sensing for the breaching method. Replay self-valid roles while having been used remotely, syntactically, blaming other things, others ourselves, for what our founders communicated about that. Why and how they had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern. For example, why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House. Now we're again renamed the Webb Stevens House or the Webb Stevens Museum. Others communicated about the value of those locations, but the value of their differences. Then our founders communicated to have appreciated about that. In other words, the news has been planting evidences all along from those founding locations with the same names involved with predicate acts on my street from other areas. And they've been speaking with the Board of Education and with town offices, town meetings, etc. Self-evident use /S of people faking and changing what's actually recorded and hiding it, and fake motivations for it. So a whole bunch of people tied to a Michael Emmett also have transitions between retired police chiefs involved further with the schools too. No one responded to the confessions the principal child abuser made to me and to others, and how they hid that and what was actually recorded about that, because they've been attaching the kids to fake and changed communications and fake ties and fake natures of ties to strangers. And they try to make fake exceptions with ones too, like a Joe DeMoro. He has something to do with a Mr. Abruzzi, involved with increasingly with various natures of organized crimes with kids. Per him, I never had a communications with Mr. Abruzzi. He told me to do a maze that a Joe DeMoro had. He's one of the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, and people with the name Scalora involved with it, with Saudis too, and Americans, used remotely effectively by the World Trade Center attack, to use both sides, incapable of defending themselves properly and of affording defenses of themselves properly from the breaching method that uses all locations, areas, and states originally still used remotely criminally right where no one wants to be, but there's exceptions, but not the ways we discern. I'm talking about the breaching method that shows everyone how to get everyone, blaming other things, others themselves. Like with black people's whites of eyes. Blaming other things, others themselves for how the breaching method put that there and rolls with it or since. In other words, so we just need those principles understood. We need on James Madison's plan. They had to force the other founders, colonists, and Native Americans to help the Native Americans and the ones coupled with James Madison's plan and themselves, where there was no means for anyone to counter what was coming, because it had already been sustained at A through Z. And then all counters to what that caused. Had you already used all sides and things with that, and then layered again, and then layered again. And then James Madison had the plan. Let's do a damage control. And we'll jump because we knew that change was coming. Those natures of change that were coming, that was all those. That was fake change. You don't call it about a T-TAC. It's child abuse. It's adult abuse. To teach that American history was about a T-TAX. Leaving out how slavery is entrenched, what it was used for. It was used to make people counter things like slavery, like T-taxes, rather than fact, human nature, torture, extortion, and therefore, fact, human nature, slavery, and therefore physical. So WFSB is increasingly more people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, with Connecticut interbranch that have been refusing to identify themselves legitimately. And thank God they caught a principal child abuser involved with them too. They use crime methods like putting charges with no writing and changing the faking that with the writing in the background and making confessions tied to that, changing the officers' names, all kinds of criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions or readings of statutes and precedents, influenced by their collusion / with all natures of crime scenes, even before those the relative murders and body dumpings went there. Like there's a body dumping spot, even if it was made up. That serial killer himself and the body dumping spot and his captors at a Sandy Hook prison. They are involved with people with other fire campuses, child campuses, college campuses, universities, research campuses. How long research campuses have been criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, doing studies on things anyway? Get down. Who disbelieves?